Hi, welcome everybody. My name is Erica Del Vecchio. I'm project manager here at Galerie Pierre-François Ouellette Art Contemporain in Montreal. And today it is my pleasure to introduce you to artist Mark Clintberg, who's going to give you a tour, a very private tour of his exhibition Portal 2 on view at the gallery now.
Hi, my name's Mark Clintberg, and I'm an artist who works in the field of art history. And I'm the artist responsible for this exhibition, Portal 2, which is at Pierre-François Ouellette in Montreal, which is the unceded territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation, also called Tsiohtià:ke. So I'm very pleased to be here to talk with you a little bit about this show and its background. As an artist, I'm often looking back at other histories, other works of art made by people before I came to my practice. And something that has come up a lot recently has to do with my relationship to the work of the Canadian artist and filmmaker Joyce Wieland. So Wieland was an artist who practiced primarily from the 60s into the early 1990s. And she worked in textiles, she worked in plastics, she, like I said, is an experimental filmmaker, a radical ecologist, and she had a special lens focused on the political practices of Pierre Elliott Trudeau, both when he was a justice minister in Canada and also when he eventually became Prime Minister of Canada. So in 1967, Pierre Elliott Trudeau is very remembered for this particular quotation where he said that there's no place for the state in the bedrooms of the nation. So this was before he was Prime Minister, but it was a time when he really wanted to advocate for non-heteronormative sexualities. And because there was recently the anniversary of this statement that he made, the anniversary was 2017, a few years ago, there was a lot of media attention that was paid to this quotation and its importance in the decriminalization of homosexuality and the impacts on anti-sodomy legislation. So there's all of this celebration around that quotation, and I have to say that just for myself, as somebody who's a cis, queer, white artist, I was really dissatisfied with those celebrations, and I will tell you why. The reason is that sexuality is still very heavily policed in Canada, and there are many ways that that happens through the incarceration of non-straight people, particularly around HIV transmission, the criminalization of HIV transmission. Not exclusively an issue for men who have sex with men, but an issue that disproportionately affects these people. So amidst all of these celebrations of this quote from 1967, I thought, I want to rework this quotation. So if there's no place, if that's the beginning of Pierre Elliott Trudeau's statement, I wanted to imagine what would happen if the word no was placed before all of the other nouns in this statement. What would that do? How would that maybe help me to imagine a different point of view on gender and sexuality? So to say that there's no state, I think is a really powerful statement. What if there was no state involvement in defining how sexuality functions and even what sexuality is? Because of course, the state actually does decide how the topic of sexuality and gender are taught in the public school system, for instance. So what would it mean to imagine no state, no nation, no place, but also no bedrooms, because of course sexuality isn't something that is only contained inside of bedrooms. I mentioned Joyce Wieland a moment ago and her importance in my practice. She's an artist that I've returned to quite a bit in the last few years. And in this second quilt work, I'm echoing one of the strategies that she often used in her practice. Not only did she make quilts, she also often made work that functioned in both of Canada's official languages, in French and in English. So for this quilt, this set of quilts, it seemed important to recognize that Pierre Elliott Trudeau's statement was published both in French and English, and this is part of how sexuality is defined discursively according to the terms that we use in French and English in the legal system. that is part of what shapes our experience of gender and sexuality. Another strategy that Wieland often used in her quilting was to collaborate with others, to work closely with quilters. And that's something that I've done over the years as well. So my very first quilting project and how I learned to quilt was in fact a collaboration with a group of women on Fogo Island as part of a Fogo Island Arts residency that I did in 2014. That was the second residency that I did on that island. And in this residency, I got to know about 17 quilters on the island who helped me to make a work that was a reference to Pierre Elliott Trudeau and also to Joyce Wieland. And although I'm not going to describe that specific work in a great deal of detail, I do want to say that out of that team of 17, I particularly got to know 3 quilters, Violet Cumden, Millicent Dwyer, and also Lillian Dwyer. And these quilters have become ongoing collaborators of mine, including in these 2 quilts that I've just been talking about. So I just wanted to thank them for their work on these incredible pieces. I wanted to give you the chance to see this work really, really close up because, as you can see, this is a patchwork quilt. It's made from scraps of fabric of many different types with different patterns and colors. And the textures and colors and fabrics that are present here are a materialization of the collaboration with these 3 women, because we made this work, we started it in the earliest months of the pandemic. And so the way that we did it was I chose some fabric that I had and I mailed it to them across the country from Alberta, where I'm often based. And then they used some fabric that they already had in their own boxes, their own stashes, as they call it. So I think that this patterning, this kind of mixture of textures, is really interesting to look at up close, because you can see that there are very different aesthetics at work, but of course that's the whole point with patchwork. And in that fragmentation, I think there's also an opportunity to think about the different valences of the message as it's been reworked from Pierre Trudeau's original statement. So this kind of like fragmenting of fabrics is sort of, well, it's akin to the way that I've fragmented and changed his message to suit myself. This next piece is one that is deliberately difficult to read. If you look carefully, you'll see that the text is written upside down and backwards. So if you were to hold a mirror up to it, it would read in the correct way. It would be easier to read. This piece is connected to another work of mine that was created for the Alberta Biennial in 2017, an exhibition that was curated by Christy Trinier and Peter Rake. And in that show, I created a work that was made out of LED lights that were suspended from a ceiling that formed together geometrically to make this same message, which, if you've been able to read it now, says, "Do I still cross your mind?" So this message was originally designed to be visible over top of your head. And the idea was that there were a series of silver platters or sort of mirrored trays that were set up that people could use to look down into, in other words, to show the mirror version of the text, so it would be both easier to read in terms of relaxing your neck, and also you could read it the right way around. So this is something that some museums and other sites with frescoes in the ceiling use, so that it makes it easier for visitors to look at a fresco, to look at a painting. So this message is about something that's kind of floating above my head a lot, which is about memories and connections to my own past and to other subjects from the past that I've never met. So it seemed appropriate to include this piece, this version of it, in this exhibition, because so much of this show is about being haunted by histories from the past that I've only learned about, really as an adult. So, for example, that quotation from Pierre Elliott Trudeau that I mentioned is something that I really didn't learn about until I was an adult in my 20s. And of course, it's also generationally distant from me because I wasn't alive in 1967. But nonetheless, like that, the legacy of that quotation still haunts me and many other people today, and is part of the groundwork or foundation, faulty though it may be, around how gender and sexuality are viewed by the nation state and how they're treated by the legal system in Canada today. So this text is also about some of the other work in the show that I'll say more about in the video in French, which you can follow in a moment.